Hello, my name is Tom Palmer and I'm a children's author and I write sports books like the Football Academy series and I also write history books like Armistice Runner and books like After the War, which is coming out quite soon. But I'm here to give an assembly to you, Year 5, at the following schools. Cheam Common Junior Academy, Cheam Fields Primary Academy, Brookfield Primary Academy, Cheam Park Farm Primary Academy and Manor Park Primary Academy. And I'm here to give you an assembly and I'm talking mostly about writing, but I think it's really important that I start by talking about reading, because I didn't like reading when I was your age. I struggled. Had you given me a book like this with loads of words and words and words and words in it, I would have just found that really overwhelming and difficult. So my mum knew I struggled with reading, so she decided she was going to encourage me to read by getting me to read newspapers to do with football, because I loved football. I didn't love reading, and she knew that she might be able to get me reading newspapers about football. Also, she got me reading magazines as well. So she got me reading magazines about football, and gradually, by getting me to read newspapers, magazines, the equivalent of websites, as they were then, and then non-fiction and fiction about football, I became someone who loves reading. And that is how I became a writer. And that's really important for me. That if you struggle with reading, which I know a lot of people do, if you struggle with reading, if you can find something that you enjoy, like something that is about one of your hobbies, it could be football, it could be cinema, it could be music, it could be something else. That's a really good way of getting into reading through what your hobbies might be. Anyway, that's my little lecture on reading. Right, I'm going to talk for a bit about Armistice Runner, which is my it's not my best-selling book. It's my fastest-selling book, which means it's been out for 2 years and it's sold the most copies, more copies than any of my books in 2 years, and it's sold about 15,000 copies, which for me is really good. I mean, David Walliams sells 500,000, but I'm just not quite up to that level yet. Anyway, so Armistice Runner. So I'm going to tell you a bit about that. Then I'm going to read you a bit, and after that, there's some questions that you sent in. Some of you, I'm going to answer them. But Armistice Runner. So this is about a girl called Lily. There she is. Lily is a fell runner, so she likes running up and down mountains. And it's also about a soldier, her great-great-granddad from 100 years before, who was involved in the First World War. And he was a runner, he was a famous runner too. And she finds out about him. And it's kind of the story about how she finds out what happened to him in the First World War. In particular, she finds out he was a really famous runner. He went to war, he survived and came back completely uninjured, not too distressed by what had happened, but he came back and he never ran again. He packed up his running shoes and never ran again. And Lily is desperate to know why. Why would you stop doing something you loved when you've been away to war for a year, which is a long time, but not in the terms of the First World War. Why would he do that? And so that's what this book is about. So I'm going to read you a section from it. I might as well. I'll just read to you from the beginning of Armistice Runner, just a couple of pages, because your teachers asked me to do an assembly, and one of the things I think they wanted me to do is read a bit. So I'm going to read about a race. Lily is having a running race. Here goes. Lily accelerated, keeping her eyes on the 3 girls ahead of her. She was 10 metres behind them and within striking distance as they climbed the muddy, waterlogged path. Time to attack. She pushed past the first of the 3 leaders, a thin girl in a white vest. Now Lily was in 3rd place. Ahead of her were Gemma and Keely, older than Lily, slower than Lily on the uphills. Chest hurting, legs hurting, everything hurting. Lily pushed herself hard. She could hear her own lungs forcing air in and out as she passed Gemma and Keely. And now she'd taken the lead. She knew she had to get her breathing right. The ground was firmer further up the hill, not boggy like at the start of the path, but Lily placed her feet carefully, avoiding exposed roots and rocks that could mean a slip or a twist. Attack! Lily knew she had to keep at it, because now she could sense who was behind her. She could see her. She couldn't hear her, but she knew she was there. All the same, Abby Granger, arms pumping like an unhinged windmill, running on Lily's shoulder, waiting for her moment to overtake. After pushing hard up the hill, Lily was struggling to breathe evenly now. Beyond her comfort zone, she heard a voice in her head as she stared across the high open moor at the other side of the valley. "It's only a training run," the voice said. "Save your best for the big race." It was true, Lily thought. This, after all, was only a training run. The last training run before the first fell race of the season. And once one that Abby would race too, in the Lake District village where Lily's gran and granddad lived. That was the important run, not this one. Lily felt a crosswind ripple over the surface of the moor. The ground beneath her feet changed from soft, wet, wild grass, damp working its way into her fell shoes. Lily hated wind like this. It interfered with her breathing, breaking the rhythm of her ins and outs. She gazed beyond the top of the moor to a larger range of hills and to the west. Clouds drifted westwards, greys and whites like giant sheep grazing on the hills. Eyes back on the track, Lily saw some of the parents standing on the side of the course, Abby's dad among them. That was the moment Abby chose to make her move. She put an explosion of pace where the track widened and fell downhill, overtaking Lily. Lily had a sudden burst of sullen fury. What had she been thinking, staring at the clouds, thinking they looked like giant sheep? Stupid. Now all she could hear was Abby's dad yelling at his daughter. "Take her!" he yelled. "Get her! Put her out of the race!" So that sets up in the book a massive competition between Lily and Abby, her great rival. And in this training race, Lily loses. And she's really upset with herself. And she's kind of at that point when things go wrong and she's like, why do I bother? What's the point? I'm going to give up. But then she goes to her grandma's and she finds out about her great granddad, who was the famous runner. And she finds out certain things to do with him and the First World War where he fought. And that inspires her to try and beat Abby in the race, which is at the end of the book. Anyway, that is the end of the reading, but I've got some excellent questions here, which I'm now going to answer for you. There's 2 from year 5, so I'll read out them first. In fact, there's 4 from year 5, 3 of which are from Atharan. Anyway, but we'll come to that. But first of all, Alicia from Cheam Park Farm Primary Academy, year 5, has asked, which one of your books is your favourite and why that one? Because it's about a girl who's a runner and it's about my favourite sport, fell running, and it's particularly linked with the hobby that I have that I do with my daughter, which is fell running, and so it's really close to my heart, this book, and I don't think I'll ever write a book that I love as much as this one. So it's Armistice Runner. The second question is from Atharan. There are 3 questions from Atharan, who is at Cheam Park Farm Primary Academy also, year 5. Why did you start writing? I started writing, Atharan, because I loved reading eventually. And once I got into reading, I really wanted to be a writer. So I started writing for that reason. I think if you see something and you love it and you love what the people are doing, you kind of try and want to emulate them, be like them. So definitely I would say that's the reason. Next question. How long have you been writing books? I started writing when I was 20. My first book was published when I was 40. So it took me 20 years to get published. And I am now 53, nearly 53. So that means I've been writing as a hobby for 33 years, which is exactly a third of a century nearly, isn't it? And I've been writing as a job, so I actually get paid to write books for 13 years. Next question. I've just said that one, sorry. How were you inspired to write books, and what do you think your best book was? I was inspired by different things. We got a dog, so I wrote a book about a dog, including my book and the Second World War. Sorry. I used to read a lot about football crime and how crimes in the world of football. I thought I'm going to write a book about a boy and a girl who try to solve crimes in the world of football. My daughter was running, and that actually is I do think that is my favourite book, which I've already said. But the question you asked actually was which is my best book, and I think it's hard to say because everyone likes different stuff. If you were like 5, this might be your favourite book by me because it's short, it's got lots of pictures, and it's about a girl going to her first football match. But if you're into history and that, this might be your favourite. This might be the one you think is the best by me. For me, I think this is the best one I've written. And that's because this is about some children who survived the Second World War. They survived the Holocaust, which I'm sure you know a little bit about, a lot of you. So the Holocaust was when the Nazis in the Second World War persecuted horribly the Jewish people. This is a story about 3 of those children and how they survived the Second World War and all that the Nazis tried to do to them. But they came to live in England in a place called Cumbria, the Lake District. And this is that story. It's based on, I've met, some of these boys are still alive, so they came here when they were about 12, 13, 14. And now they're in their early to mid 80s. Or late 80s, sorry, early to mid 90s. So I've met them and talked to them, and this is, I think, my best book because I think I hope I've managed to tell their story. Good question. Next question. This is from Finlay in Year 4 at Brookfield Primary Academy. What is my favourite football team? My favourite football team is Leeds United. Good question. Next question is from Shaylee from Cheam Common Junior Academy. What made you think you wanted to be a writer? I suppose that it's that thing about I loved reading and I wanted to be a writer because I loved being a reader, I suppose. Right, let's find another question. How many books have you written? That's from Jaden, who's in Year 2 at Manor Park Primary Academy. This is my 50th book, so I'm quite excited about that coming out. That's weird, it catches the sun like that, isn't it? Anyway, that's another thing. Next question is, I'm just trying to find one that we haven't answered already. What made you, oh no, I've asked that one. How do you become an author? That's a good question. We'll finish with that one, we'll have that as the last question. Right, so, that was from How Do You Become an Author? And that was from Arush at Manor Park Primary Academy. Right. I became an author, or you could become, let's say, how could you become an author? If you, the first thing is, if you read, you naturally become good at writing. To become an author, or just to become someone who can string some words together. I think if you read, that is the best advice about how to become an author. Read lots of different stuff. Fiction, non-fiction, newspapers, magazines, websites, all sorts of different stuff, and then you'll become good at writing, and that's the first thing. I would say start small. I started off writing poems, short stories, letters, a diary, short things that weren't too intimidating, that I had to write loads and loads of stuff. And I kind of moved up to writing longer things like whole books. So that was quite important. Start with short things, and then you can build up to write longer and longer things. I'd also say how to become a writer is don't give up. Like I said, it took me 20 years to get published, but just don't give up. You will get there in the end if you really keep trying. I suppose the other thing is, write about what you're passionate about. If you love something, or if there's something in the world that you really don't love and that troubles you, write about that, and write about something that gives you strong feelings, strong emotions, and then you might be able to write about it as a job. Then actually getting published in the first place is you have to write stuff and then send it to publishers or agents who if they like it enough, will publish it, and then you'll get paid for it. And the bottom line is, and this is the last thing I'll say, is if you write a book and a publisher likes it, they will publish it, Because if they like it enough and they think they're going to make money out of it, they will publish it and pay you for it. So that would be my last piece of advice. But before we finish, I want to say thank you for listening. I hope you have a great summer and find lots of good stuff to read. But I'd also like to wish you and your family all the best during these unusual times. I hope all goes well for you, and that everything gets nice and back to normal in September when you're in year 6. Thank you, year 5.